How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Drop 1000, and in this video, we're of course going to focus on the next few winter storms that are expecting to move into the United States by next week, where now it's a little bit more likely we could see a significant Midwest snowstorm that could dump over 6 inches of snow in some localized areas, and we'll also talk about this significant snowstorm that's currently impacting the western portion of Texas and the eastern portion of New Mexico, where you could experience up to a foot of snow in some localized areas. And of course, we're also going to focus on the major snow that's expected to move through the higher elevations of the Rocky Mountain region, as well as the Cascade Mountain regions, and potentially as far south as California as well. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more what they called it. So take a look at the current radar. We do see that here's our significant Texas snowstorm, and based on what you see on the radar, you're probably thinking that it doesn't necessarily look like a typical major snowstorm that you'd see impact the United States, because typically a significant snowstorm has an area of snow that's a lot larger than this small area that we're seeing right here. However, the thing is that while the area of snow is small, it's staying over the same area for a long period of time. This is as a result of this upper level low pretty much being disconnected from the jet stream, which would steer low pressure systems fast towards the east. Instead, this low pressure system is pretty much cut off as a result of this ridge that's just to the north of it. So it's dealing with weak steering currents at this point, and it's going to stay over Texas for the next 24 to 48 hours before it eventually moves northeastward, which is the reason why many areas in Texas could experience close to, if not over, a foot of snow as a result of how persistent this small snow band is. And this snow is expected to move a little bit further southward before it eventually moves northeastward. So if you're in this small area, and even just to the southwest of this small area, you need to take high precaution when you're driving, because of course this associated with this snow band is very heavy snowfall. We do see thunderstorms embedded on the eastern half of the moisture, so we do see that there are areas of heavy snow associated with this low pressure system. So you need to stay prepared while you're on the road, because there could be that heavy snow band that might catch you off guard while you're traveling. So make sure to stay safe and take the right precautions, and do not go out unless it's a significant emergency, because this is very the snow associated with this snow band is very heavy, and it's better to be safe than sorry in a scenario like this. So expect a heavy amount of snowfall for a prolonged period of time throughout southwestern Texas before it moves out. And we're of course talking also taking a look at this low pressure system that's coming off the Pacific Northwest, which is what we typically see during a La Nina. We do have some snow just to the east of the Spokane, Washington area and the higher elevations, Idaho. However, this low pressure system is relatively weak, so this won't be necessarily the low pressure system that brings a heavy amount of snowfall throughout the Rocky Mountain region, as it should come with this next low pressure system that's still currently out over the open Pacific, but eventually it will move ashore right around the Pacific Northwest and bring a heavy amount of snowfall throughout the higher elevations of the Cascades and the Rocky Mountains. So you need to pay very close attention to that, where you could experience over 2 feet of snow. Now take a look at what the GFS model is forecasting over the next few days. So of course this low pressure system will linger over the same area before, I'd say, the snow will eventually stop right around the Saturday afternoon time frame. That's when we should see the storm, this low pressure system eventually move to the northeast as a result of this this trough that I was just talking to you guys about, that's currently centered over the Pacific Northwest at this time. And while I did say the trough was weak, it will bring a pretty significant jet stream dip that will eventually steer this storm to the northeast. However, right behind this trough, we will see our next very significant trough, where we do see that the pressure is down to the 990s, the low 990s. So it is relatively strong, and it's strong enough to bring a heavy amount of snow over a relatively large area, as we do see some heavy snow right around around the Yellowstone National Park region, portions of Idaho and Montana as well. And we see another trough come right behind this trough where it's just bringing a persistent amount of snow right around the higher elevations of the Cascades. So you should expect potentially feet of snow rather than inches in the higher elevations of the Cascades. But associated with this trough will be very strong northwesterly winds that will force a jet stream further southward that will create the likely possibility of a snowstorm right around the Midwest. We do see that GFS model takes a relatively small area of snow throughout the Midwest. The European model is a little bit more confident that we're going to see a snowstorm that's a bit more significant if I were to continue to move forward. We do see that the European model eventually takes that heavy snow into the central portion of the Midwest and eventually brings a lot more heavy snow to Minnesota, where Minneapolis gets involved, where you could potentially receive over 6 inches of snow associated with this low pressure zone. But the GFS model, as of the latest run compared to yesterday, has been leaning more towards what the European model is stating. So this could be one of those scenarios where the European model will likely be the more accurate one, and based on what the European model is forecasting, we should expect a relatively large area of 3 to 6 inches throughout portions of the Midwest, including states like Nebraska, South Dakota, and of course Minnesota, where we do see a relatively large area of 3 to 6 inches, 1 to 3 in some areas, but the further northeastward you go, the more the snowfall accumulation increases, where you could experience up to 6 inches of snow close to the Minneapolis area. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, and this should occur by the middle of the week, head into Tuesday and Wednesday. So make sure to be aware of that if you're in the Midwest, because this should occur during the work week. So make sure you take the correct plans just before this snowstorm comes, because it's definitely good to stay prepared when there's the possibility of significant snowstorm. There's still time the forecast could change, but I'd say more likely than not you will at least experience some snow associated with this low pressure system based on what the two computer models are stating. There's still uncertainty regarding exactly how much snow. This could potentially be stronger than anticipated, depending on how much instability there is right around the middle portion of the United States, and that really determines the initial strength at which this first trough comes ashore. Now, taking a look at what the GFS model is forecasting when it comes to snowfall, we do see a heavy amount of snowfall just to the right around the western portion of Nebraska. But let me go actually to the 18Z run. I apologize for that, but taking a look at what the GFS model is stating, even with the 18Z run, the GFS model is forecasting a heavy amount of snow throughout the western portion of Nebraska, where you could experience over 6 inches of snow, but just around the eastern portion of Nebraska, and you see that towards the extreme southern portion of South Dakota and Minnesota, you're only experiencing maybe around an inch of snow, and we do see that the heaviest of the snow misses Minneapolis entirely, as the heaviest of the snow moves a little bit further southward and further eastward to where Wisconsin and the northern portion of Michigan gets more involved in what the European model is suggesting. So there's also the track forecast we need to pay close attention to, depending on how this jet stream dips and how it positions itself. Really all depends on this ridge that builds just to the east of it, as that's definitely something we're going to need to pay close attention to over the next several days. If we were to see a more significant jet stream dip, then we're more likely expected to see a stronger storm, and of course we're going to need to determine the position of this ridge, because that will determine the angle at which this storm will form. But I'll keep you guys updated if there's any major changes in the forecast. But the Minneapolis area, you need to be aware of the possibility that there could be a major snowstorm. We're just going to need to wait and see which computer model may be the correct one. I'd say I'm leaning a little bit more to the European model, based on the fact that the European model was already initially correct, that it wanted to bring at least some snowfall to the Midwest, while the GFS model model wasn't doing any of that yesterday. So I'd say that the GFS, this could be one of those scenarios where the GFS model is sort of playing catch up with the European model when it comes to the forecast. So I'd say the European model might be a little bit more reliable in this case, but the GFS model is still a very reliable model that we don't want to underestimate either. So we could very well see a GFS model like scenario. So just be aware right around the Midwest, but I will say with confidence that at least Nebraska should experience some snowfall associated with this. It might be light, maybe around an inch, but it could be potentially more significant to where maybe you experience closer to 6 inches or so, and potentially more than that depending on how much instability there is. But I'll keep you guys updated as we continue see shifts in the forecast. Now beyond this snowstorm, we do see that there's of course going to be a significant jet stream that will bring temperatures well below average headed into next week. So that's of course another thing you want to pay close attention to. Temperatures are going to feel more winter-like for a lot of northern Midwest, and we're also going to need to pay close attention to something more in the short-term future, which is a heavy rain right around the Midwest, and we could potentially see some severe weather as well, because associated with this upper level low, we do have cold air right around the inner core, and that will induce enough instability and enough lift right around the Gulf of Mexico for potentially significant severe weather threat to occur. If we were to take a look at the convective available potential energy levels right around the southeast, you do see that it will be a little bit elevated right around southeast, where we do have some of that convective available potential energy move into the Louisiana area. So that's of course something we're going to need to pay close attention to. While of course we see convective available potential energy levels higher, let's say during the spring and summer months, the thing is that during the winter, mostly the convective available potential energy levels will always be lower, because that since the temperatures are colder, there's of course it's going to be harder for there to be as much convective available potential energy with colder temperatures, because of course cooler temperatures can't hold as much water vapor compared to warmer temperatures, because in a cooler air mass, the air molecules are a lot more clumped together. There's a lot less movement for the atmosphere to hold that water vapor, while during warmer temperatures, we see the air molecules bounce around more. There's a lot more space in the atmosphere. The air is a lot less dense, so there's a lot more space for the atmosphere during a warmer day to hold more water vapor. But since we're approaching the winter time, it doesn't seem like the convective available potential energy levels are high, but it's still more than enough during the winter time to create potentially significant severe weather. So you want to pay close attention to that. Now another thing you're going to need to pay close attention to in the southeast is the heavy rain threat associated with this trough moving through, because you could experience 3 to 5 inches of rain over a large area of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and extending into the northern portion of Georgia over the next 5 days. And in some areas that could cause flooding, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility of flash flooding as well, because there's going to be a pretty strong line of thunderstorms moving through. So flash flooding is certainly in the realm of possibilities, and for a lot of people this could be beneficial regarding the drought that's going on, but it also could be potentially dangerous if you live in a flood zone where your area is potentially very flood prone. So make sure to be aware of that possibility that there could be flooding rain associated with this storm. And if you live in a flood prone area, you need to make sure to stay prepared in case of a flood in the near future. Now, take a look at the North Atlantic Oscillation. We're going to take a look at this pretty often during the winter to really see how our winter will shape up, at least in the short-term future, because the North Atlantic Oscillation does give a good index on what to expect when it comes to a little bit more of a long-term forecast. And we do see that for the month of December, the forecast is still that we're going to hover around a negative North Atlantic Oscillation phase, so we could be in for more colder and snowier conditions this December. So of course we're gonna definitely be aware of that and make sure to take the right precautions when we do see a significant snowstorm move through the United States. Now here is my forecast forecast regarding the amount of snow you should expect over the next week. I am expecting a large area of 3 to 6 inches of snow, extending to Utah, the eastern, right around Nevada, and we could even see some snow by late next week, right around the Sierra Mountain ranges of California, where a trough will move through. That's gonna bring snow just far south of you guys, where California could get involved. And now I'm expecting 3 to 6 inches for the Midwest at this time, leaning a little bit more to the European model scenario. This forecast is subject to change, so make sure to be aware of that possibility. And I'm expecting an additional 3 to 6 inches right around western Texas as a result of this storm. But the snow will be heavy at times, so if you're driving, make sure to stay safe. And we could potentially see flooding rain over the next several days right around the southeast. So make sure to stay prepared for the next few snowstorms coming through, because it could be significant, especially right around higher elevations of the West Coast over the next week. Now, anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. I hope you guys have a great day.